What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today we are digging into the Hario Switch. Now this one is nothing new, and I'm definitely not the first on the scene with a hot take. But I've had it as part of my coffee bar for the last few months, and I've been slowly acquainting myself with its brewing capabilities and its shortfalls. In the wide world of pour-over drippers, it's something a little different, combining the capability of switching, hence the name, between percolation and immersion brewing methods. Which simply put is the difference between brewing by gravity, i.e. extracting the flavor as water travels through the bed of coffee, think traditional pour-over for example, versus fully immersing the grinds in water to allow the water to seep out the coffee's flavor, much like your standard cold brew. As you maybe guessed or already know, these two very different methods create two very different cups of coffee, with percolation creating generally cleaner, crisper cups, and immersion generally building more body and complexity while minimizing acidity. So the Switch basically answers that age-old question, what happens when you combine the two? So that's what we're getting into today. If you aren't familiar with the Switch and how it works, here's a quick overview. It's essentially the V60 cone we all know and love on top of a base that has a simple mechanism that either lifts a small steel ball up to block the flow, or lowers it down to allow the brewed coffee to pass through. Like many other coffee drippers, you can go extremely simple or you can go way off the beaten path, and I tried it every which way. As a pure immersion dripper, it works like you may imagine. Whether you're a coffee first then water, or a water first then coffee kind of person, it'll need a good amount of agitation at both the start and the end, with about a 3 to 4 minute brew time to get a good level of extraction. On the other hand, using it as a pure percolation dripper, essentially using it like you would the V60, nothing has really changed on that front. But brewing by these relatively familiar and simple routes isn't what this thing was made for. It was made to dive you into a deep hole of experimentation. But by far, my favorite method on the Switch is a multi-phase mix of percolation and immersion that I loosely modeled after my favorite brewer, the ground control, which essentially uses a unique immersion and draining process to hit the same grinds with fresh brew water on multiple passes, all combining into one very balanced and tasty cup. To start, prep up your dripper, rinse your filter, and measure out your dose. In this brew, I use 18 grams of coffee ground on a medium coarseness, and brew it on a 1:16 ratio, meaning I'll use 288 grams of brew water just off a boil. So first up is phase 1, the bloom. With the Switch in the open position, pour in 72 grams of brew water in a circular motion in about 5 to 10 seconds. Give it a quick stir and allow it to drip through where you can clearly see the bed, which should be about 30 to 45 seconds. Phase 2 and 3 are the same, with phase 4 only adding a swirl at the end. To begin each of these phases, make sure your Switch is closed, and pour in 72 grams of brew water in about 15 to 20 seconds. Then allow for a short immersion time, another 10 to 15 seconds for light roasts, and 5 to 10 seconds for medium, and then flip the Switch to open. As it draws down once it hits the bed, close up and repeat the process, and I generally found drawdowns taking between 15 and 20 seconds, and make sure you swirl at the end of phase 4. This method will take a bit longer than most other pour-over methods. I averaged around 4.5 to 5 minutes, but the brews have been worth waiting for. The end result should be a very fragrant and very balanced cup of coffee, that also have some consistently high extraction numbers in the low to mid 20s. Also, a couple things worth noting. For one, you can absolutely dose more or less, just divide your total brew weight by 4 and you should be good to go. Last and certainly not least, grind size is an interesting piece to this puzzle, as it doesn't really matter as much as it would with a standard percolation brew. But due to fine migrations in later phases, you can experience a significant slowdown if you go too fine. But whether or not that's a bad thing is more or less up to your taste buds, because I've had brews without over extraction issues all the way up to and a little bit beyond 8 minutes. When I first heard of and saw the Switch, I thought it was more or less a glorified clever dripper. And in some cases you can achieve similar brews and results with a clever. But when it comes to the overall benefits of the Switch, it just feels like a better value, like a buy one get one free. You've got the ability to run it like a standard V60, which, let's be honest, it's a legend in the coffee scene for very good reason. Plus, you've got the ability to run it like a clever, which is super convenient and simple. I mean, who doesn't sometimes want to just set it and forget it while they make a bowl of cereal? And of course, if you're a total weirdo like me, and I assume a good number of you are, you can get real weird with it and go down the rabbit hole of experimentation and ideas at the flick of a switch. So in the end, my take on the Hario Switch is it kind of feels like the only coffee dripper you'll really need. Like the Swiss Army knife of brewing devices. From beginner to total coffee nerd, you'll be happy with what it can produce. So with that said, it's time for me to stop talking and pass the kettle on to you. What do you think of percolation versus immersion brewing? What about the ability to use it in the same dripper? And if you have a switch, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and what recipes you've really been enjoying. So leave your answers to those and any other questions or thoughts you may have in the comment section down below, and I'll see y'all next week. And a big thank you to my August Patreons, Ads, Jacob P, Christopher, Squeegee Rowe, Brian, Andre, Sean Noel, Spookus, Samantha, Claire, Stephen, Alexis, Josh B, Bound Coffee, James K, Josh, Horrison, Corey C, Curry, Jeff Roth, Joey N, Thomas B, UK Espresso, Tim, Jason C, Jerry, Matt Ray, Home Barista Coach, Gumby, Zachary V, Robert Underdunk, Jeffrey R, BJK Cafe, Daniel P, Mike B, Brian M, Tyler M, Barista Michael, Matthew C, JRC, Arthur L, Absolute, Stephen G, Jose, Keefe, Stephen A, Joseph M, Ed T, TechCom Advisors, Nate B, Keith M, and Happy Camper. And of course, a big thank you to the barista and barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.